Real quick, before we get into the haul, I just want to share with you guys that recently my girlfriend and I saw Mr. Speed, the greatest KISS tribute band out there, at our local theater, and it was an absolutely phenomenal show. Had a chance to meet them afterwards, and during the show, Rich Kosak, who performs the role of Paul Stanley in the band, called me out during the show.
What's up, Dylan? What up, baby? Yeah!
And let me hold his Ibanez guitar. Just wanted to share that real quick. Now into the video. What's going on, vinyl community and KISS Army? Welcome to another video with the Record Spinner. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a long-awaited KISS-themed bootleg vinyl haul, and this one is going to be focusing on, as titled in the video, all chapters of KISSTORY. This encompasses eras with and without makeup over the span of 5 decades, dating back to soundboard recordings from the 70s, all the way through to audience recordings from the end of the road, along with everything else in between, such as the occasional radio broadcast, tour rehearsals, demos, Wicked Lester sessions, even some solo territory, and so much more. I have been accumulating these releases for quite some time, and since it's been a little over a year since I last did a KISS bootleg haul, the last one being an 80s centered one, I figured the time had finally come. Plus, it's cool this time around to focus on all eras of the band instead of one specific one. So the variety aspect of this haul is honestly what's pretty fun about it. I'm babbling on way too much and there's a lot to get through. So enough of the chit chat. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the latest KISS bootleg finds. First up is Atlanta, 1979. This is a soundboard recording taken from the Omni in Atlanta, Georgia on June 30th, 1979 during the Dynasty Tour. For the longest time, there was a reasonable audience recording of this show that had circulated and was given a vinyl pressing called the Omni Returns, and now there's this different source altogether. The only drawback of this new source that has recently surfaced is that it is an incomplete soundboard recording. Starts at the beginning with King of the Nighttime World, runs to Love Gun, skips out 2000 Man, Tossin' and Turnin', God of Thunder, and Shout It Out Loud, and then jumps back into Black Diamond to the end of the show. So there's a bit of leverage with the complete audience recording, but hey, a soundboard KISS tape from the 70s, regardless if it's complete or incomplete, is a gem to behold. Another interesting thing with the show is that Paul actually sings lead on Black Diamond, which is a little bit of an interesting divergence compared to Peter usually singing it. This was put out by Casino Records, includes a cool sort of comic-based illustration of the band, kind of similar to the t-shirt that I'm wearing right here. Band photo on the back with the track list. This is limited to 350 copies. I have copy number 48, and it comes pressed on white vinyl. Next up is Alive 35. Now, this is an anomaly of a release, and this tends to happen sometimes with bootleg releases. The cover here states that it was recorded on June 1st, 2008 in Bergen, Norway, but in reality, when I played it, it's from the show a few days later at the Colorline Arena in Hamburg, Germany on June 4th, 2008 during the Alive 35 tour. Like KISS had done with several tours starting in the mid-2000s going into 2010, they would bring on various companies to record shows live and sell them afterwards on CD or USB. And to be honest, set aside the $40 t-shirt and the $10 beer, those served as the ultimate concert souvenirs. And I'm happy to say that I have a CD of my first KISS show when I saw them back in 2004 on the Rock the Nation tour, but I do digress. So in 2008, for the European leg of the Alive 35 tour, KISS employed Concert Live to record several shows, and as always with these recordings, they were taken off the soundboard, no pun intended, so they sound phenomenal, and that's exactly what we have here. Now, given what we are used to with the live albums and studio trickery, these were true warts and all records with all the stage raps, flub notes, and everything else that entails. Setlist wise, this is one of my favorites since they played a large portion of KISS Alive and then an encore set of other show staples. The cover here is the same one that was used for the CDs that were sold after the show, despite the Norway mislabel there. Same with the back side. Single sleeve, and the show is spread across 3 LPs pressed on very nice silver vinyl. Next up is a notable piece of pre-KISSTORY, and that is the Wicked Lester album. It goes without mentioning that Wicked Lester was the band Gene and Paul were in prior to forming KISS. They had a record deal with Epic Records, and they recorded an album that, to this day, even 50 years later, has never officially been released. And that's what this is. In terms of Wicked Lester's sound, if you think of some of the musical trends and cliches that were going on in the early 70s, this album has all of them in a melting pot. You have elements of pop, rock, folk, arrangements with congas, flutes, saxophones, and harmonicas. It's truly a hodgepodge, and it lacked a singular direction, and that's perhaps why the album was rejected by the label and the band kind of dissipated, but given the KISS connection, it makes for a rather fascinating listen. Now, aside from Gene and Paul's involvement, there are also some other Wicked Lester ties with KISSTORY, since KISS would do their own renditions of tracks like She and Love Her All I Can, and they used to do Keep Me Waiting in Simple Type during their early club shows. What you see here on the cover is the original photo that was proposed for the album, which was later used on the cover for the first Laughing Dogs album. Also, fun fact, this Wicked Lester logo was designed back in 1971 by Michael Dorette, who would go on to design the covers for Kiss's Rock and Roll Over and Sonic Boom. So it all kind of ties in. This pressing is limited to 350 copies. I have copy number 23. Nice low number there. And it comes pressed on a sort of red and yellow flame marbled vinyl. Next up is Live Detroit 1974. This is a radio broadcast from the Michigan Palace in Detroit, Michigan on April 7th, 1974 during the first album tour. This show was part of the 6th annual Kite-In that was hosted by WABX, and KISS was bottom of the bill with Aerosmith headlining. Now there's a cool show there. This performance is absolutely sensational. I'd say it's at the same caliber as the Cleveland 74 broadcast, which was only a few days prior of this show. Out of all of the early era radio broadcasts that are out there, this was a big missing gap that I needed for my collection, and it took some time since there was a gold vinyl pressing done some time ago, which has increased in value. So for this picture disc pressing that I got of this show suffices. Now, this is actually a part of a 4 picture disc set, one for each member, consisting of the same show. Now, personally, I don't see the sense of owning something like that in my collection, so I was able to persuade the individual who runs the Facebook group that I got this from to break up a set so I can get a chance to at least own one of the discs. And I got the Peter one since he's featured on this side, and then you have a cool shot of Gene and Ace on this side. Now, it came in that sort of thick, clear plastic sleeves that most picture discs come in, with a backing sleeve and a sticker. So I did something different. I packaged the picture disc in a nice anti-static sleeve. Then I placed that inside of this kind of generic black sleeve, and I used the backing sheet, which was on the back of that clear sleeve, and just placed it right in the front. It does kill off any selling value, but why would one attempt to part ways with a KISS radio broadcast from 1974? You just simply wouldn't. Next up is Alive 2 Winter Tour. This is a soundboard recording taken from the Capitol Center in Largo, Maryland on December 20th, 1977 during the Alive 2 tour. This is essentially an audio rip from the pro shot video taken by the in-house video crew, and I have to say visually, this show is probably the best looking piece of KISS live footage from the 70s. And it's down to the fact that this show was also shot for the American Music Awards, so extra lighting precautions were put in place for the purposes of TV, and the end result is much more illuminated compared to, let's say, Houston 77, where they are relying on the park cans that they had for the lighting rig. But anyways, it's a solid show. It was also Peter Criss's birthday, so Paul mentioned that before Rock and Roll All Night. And one can say that this is a nice alternative to the Des Moines Off the Soundboard release, since it's the same set list from that tour. The packaging on this is absolutely awesome, and it kind of reminds me how those Destroyer soundboards were designed, with the colored OBs reflecting what color and the vinyl. But this time around, we have the band members on the OBs. So for this one, I have Ace. Front cover is a bit of fun design. Back cover has some great shots from the Mylar photo shoot. Gatefold opens up and we have this wide stage shot. Disregard the OB strip right in the middle there. And of course, this is includes a nice 20-page booklet full of great live shots and various shots from photo shoots. Just absolutely great stuff. And this pressing is pressed on clear vinyl. Next up is Rock and Roll Over, the complete tour rehearsals. This is a series of recordings taken from the rehearsals held at the Camp Curtis Guild Armory in Reading, Massachusetts in November 1976 in preparation for the Rock and Roll Over tour. These rehearsals are quite well known to KISS collectors. Some of these recordings appeared as bonus cuts on the Happy New Year bootleg of the Providence 77 show, and there's also a different source recording released as the Choppers and Chicks bootleg, but this is the first time a complete set of recordings has been released in the wild. If you're a KISS video aficionado, there's the familiar black and white single angle video with a full shot of the stage production and the band running through the set, one song of which appeared in the Kiss My Ass Home video. But back in the summer of 2022, with all the Sam Loomis stuff going on, a full tape had emerged on the internet, and the source for this release is that video. Now, this release is interesting both in the sense that you get to hear the band run through songs that didn't last long in the Rock and Roll Over tour set list, such as Strutter, Love 'Em and Leave 'Em, Hard Luck Woman, and Deuce. And they also run through several renditions of I Want You, Hard Luck Woman, Making Love, and Beth, perfecting the arrangements as they go. The jacket features some elements of the Rock and Roll Over album cover with a shot of the band taken from the same rehearsals, since they were also utilized for photo shoots and for when the band filmed some promo films that were aired on Don Kirshner's rock concert. There's the graphic from the printed inner sleeve of the Rock and Roll Over album. And another shot of that same photo shoot can be seen in the gatefold. Now, this is limited to 300 copies. I have copy number 52, and this is pressed on turquoise colored vinyl. Next up is Saints and Toronto. This is a soundboard recording taken from the Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto, Ontario, Canada on January 14th, 1983 during the Creatures of the Night tour. I was honestly quite surprised to see this come out because I was not aware of a soundboard recording existing of this show. Aside from an average sounding audience recording, definitely sounds like it comes from the same batch of other soundboards that appeared on the Super Deluxe Creatures box set. I gotta say, the bottom end of this, particularly Eric's bass drums, cuts through so well on this pressing, so it's definitely well mastered. Setlist wise, this is one of the earliest instances where songs got switched around, but material wise, it's the core setlist. One fun thing I took notice of during Paul's guitar solo early in the show is that he plays one of the riffs that wound up on Lick It Up, and somehow that transitioned into the guitar lick he plays before Black Diamond, which appears later in the set. And of course, you get Vinny's shred vomit solo and some of the backing vocals. I don't know if it's Vinny or Eric stand out in the mix, but overall, this is such an enjoyable listen. Only downside is that War Machine is cut and starts midway through the second verse, probably because the tape ran out. But otherwise, this has some fantastic artwork on the front with the Toronto skyline and a bit of Maple Leaf Gardens on the back cover here. This includes a sort of tour book style photo diary with photos taken from the show, along with screenshots from news clips. There's even a shot of Paul doing this big jump and tearing the sole of his boots. Really great stuff. And there is also a fold-out poster advertising the show, which uses the classic image from the promo poster for Creatures. And this comes pressed on gold vinyl with some very cool custom center labels. Next up, we dig into some solo territory, and that is Paul Stanley's One Live Kiss. This is basically the soundtrack to the concert film that was shot at the House of Blues in Chicago, Illinois on November 6th, 2006 during the tour in support of Paul's Live to Win solo album. This is a fun show to listen to, and it's a dream for Kiss diehards because of the set list. Sure, Paul brought out Kiss staples like Love Gun in Detroit Rock City, but he even dusted off some deep cuts like Hide Your Heart, A Million to One, and Magic Touch. Even hearing some much loved cuts like Got to Choose, I Still Love You, and Strutter are a real treat. So on the Kiss end, all bases are covered. And of course, Paul plays some material from his 1978 solo album, as well as Live to Win. A little fun fact, Paul had also employed the house band from the TV show Rockstar to be his backing band, and they reinvent this material with such precision, groove, and tightness. The audio is taken straight from the film, so it honestly sounds perfect for a bootleg, or I should say counterfeit release, since the audio is up on streaming platforms. You get what I mean though, and it's still awesome to own. The gatefold jacket comes in a nice glossy finish, which looks really solid, and there are some cool glossy printed inner sleeves. Now, this comes pressed on red vinyl, and the center labels include some Live to Win guitar picks, which look absolutely awesome. Next up, we shift back into Wicked Lester territory with the Spring Sessions from 1972. Just to kind of backtrack a little bit, Wicked Lester did multiple sessions at Electric Lady Studios, some perhaps for demo purposes, and obviously ones for the album presented to Epic Records. And the versions of the tracks on this release differ from what became the final album, but also sound similar to another bootleg that I have called the original Wicked Lester Sessions. I'll have to do an in-depth A/B comparison. Perhaps some stuff was recorded multiple times, or fresh overdubs were applied to what existed before. With this release, as an added bonus, you get an extra take of the song Simple Type, and just down to the pre-KISSTORY ties and the fact that these versions differ from the album, it's interesting to hear these songs in an alternate light. This is another Casino Records release, and they kind of give a weathered look to the original cover and paste the Electric Lady tape box over top of it. This is limited to 350 copies, another nice low number of number 18, and this is pressed on yellow vinyl. Next up is Too Much Catnip. This is a soundboard recording taken from the Knoxville Coliseum in Knoxville, Tennessee on September 12th, 1979 during the Dynasty Tour. In contrast to the Atlanta release that I showed earlier in this video, this is a more complete recording. There is a bit of tape fluttering on Love Gun, so maybe it ran out on one side and was flipped over during the song. And it is missing Beth as well, whether it wasn't performed that night or wasn't taped. One interesting thing with this show is that this is when they took out Radioactive and Tossin' and Turnin' from the set list and replaced those with Let Me Go, Rock and Roll. So it's nice to have a soundboard source of the later period show from this tour. Now, performance-wise, you can sort of hear the band disintegrate here with how the tempos are just so absurdly fast and a bit sloppy. Maybe it alludes to this bootleg's title. Perhaps Peter was on some sort of catnip that night. Who really knows? You know exactly what I'm talking about. Plus, there were some amplification malfunctions, so it really is a warts and all representation of where the band was at this point. As an added bonus, there's the inclusion of a band interview done for Veronica's Countdown in Holland, which took place before the show on this specific evening. So for historical purposes, that's included here as well. The cover is rather artistic. The look of it gives a sort of almost canvas type finish to it, and I like how each member has their respective color backlit behind them. I should also mention that there are 4 other cover variants that each member appears on, so if you are a collector of all sorts, have fun tracking those down, but I'll always opt for a full band option if it is out there. The back has a sort of cartoonish tinge with the inclusion of each member's instruments, and at the time, Paul had the cracked mirror Ibanez, and the axe featured here is the Steve Carr prototype, which is nice. There is a Knoxville journal book, which has photos taken backstage before the show, some quotations from the Veronica Countdown interview, some live shots from the show, all kinds of really good stuff. And there is also a poster with the front cover artwork advertising the show. Now, this pressing that I have is pressed on red vinyl and includes the Casablanca Record and Filmworks label. Next up is Asbury Park 1975. This is an audience recording taken from the Convention Hall in Asbury Park, New Jersey on June 25th, 1975 during the Dress to Kill tour. The recording itself sounds a bit distant and bass heavy, but is still acceptable for audience recording standards of the time, and it's worth mentioning that the taper of this show also recorded the Northampton, Pennsylvania show early on from this tour on March 19th. This show is actually one that I have been on the hunt for a number of years for various reasons. First off, New Jersey is my home state, so it's cool to get a piece of Kiss Jersey KISSTORY. But what's intriguing with this show is the set list. Right off the bat, they played Rock Bottom and Let Me Know, both of which are rarities that didn't get played quite consistently, and the latter appears as a final encore, which is such an odd way to end the show. And they stuck in Nothing to Lose, where Got to Choose typically was performed in the beginning of the set, and the latter wasn't even performed. So there are some quite stark differences that make this show unique. The packaging of this release is so cool. The cover is taken from the show poster, which I'll show in a bit. The back and gatefold has some also live shots with some fake liner notes from Robert Conti. Instead, it's copy and pasted from Kiss FAQ. Kind of amusing. I mentioned the show poster comprising of the front cover, and that is what is featured here. And there are also some printed inner sleeves from the photo shoot with model Megan McCracken, some of which are a little suggestive, so I got to be careful with what I show on camera. The records themselves are pressed on white vinyl and come with the Casablanca camel labels. Next up is Austin Loves It Loud. This is an audience recording taken from the Germania Insurance Amphitheater in Austin, Texas on September 29th, 2021 during the End of the Road tour. This is a bit of a truncated release that features basically the first half of the show, but covers enough ground between 70s classics, 80s material, and present day stuff. Maybe there will be an Austin Loves It Loud Part 2, and that's maybe the second half. Who knows? The recording itself is a bit bass heavy. Some of the crispness is not present, and sometimes the pyro does take precedence over the band. Same can be said at moments about the audience reactions, but it's still a listenable show, and it's nice to have this release of a show from a year that I did see the band play. Caught the Atlantic City show about a month prior to this Austin gig, and it was indeed the closest I ever was for a Kiss show. Third row, baby. Such an awesome night. Front and back cover features some cool end-of-the-road era photos of the band. Pretty standard packaging. And the vinyl itself comes pressed on marbled blue colored vinyl. Next up is Reunion Square Garden. This is a soundboard recording taken from, you guessed it, Madison Square Garden in New York City on July 27th, 1996 during the Reunion tour. Now, this show was released as a Walmart exclusive bonus disc with the Kissology Volume 3 DVD, so it's another case of board audio taken from a pro shop video, but the show itself was edited and does not feature King of the Nighttime World, Do You Love Me, New York Groove, or Beth. But even with those omissions, this release is a bit choppy in places. Ace's guitar solo in Shock Me and Peter's drum solo in God of Thunder are cut out, and Black Diamond fades out just before the band goes into that climactic finale. And to top it off, there's a disco remix of Dirty Livin' from Dynasty tagged on as a bonus track. Definitely an oddball release. Regardless, the show itself is electrifying. The original lineup was back in action and playing a consecutive run of shows on home turf at the Garden, so it's definitely a reunion tour highlight. Now, despite the artwork containing photos from 77, 78, it still looks pretty cool, and there's a little bit of a Dress to Kill homage on the front cover. This is also limited and numbered out of 100 copies. This is copy number 33, and it comes pressed on marbled gray vinyl with a cool outtake from the first album photo shoot on the center labels. Next up is Suicide and Salvation. This is an audience recording taken from the Sheffield Arena in Sheffield, England on May 18th, 1992 during the Revenge Tour. This show sounds incredibly respectable, and I absolutely love recordings from this time frame because you get the sense that the band is now comfortable being out of the makeup, and they had a brilliant record with Revenge to show for it. Paul's stage raps are so over the top in confidence, it's absolutely infectious. Obviously, when one thinks of the Revenge tour, they think of the Statue of Liberty stage set. But when KISS went out for a UK tour in 1992 after Revenge had come out, it was more so an extension of the Hot in the Shade tour, since they brought the Sphinx stage back out, and the flow of the set list is similar, with opening with I Stole Your Love and chalking the show with full of old school classics. I mean, look at this set list. It is absolutely tremendous. Now, specifically for this leg of the tour, they worked in things like Parasite and 100,000 Years, which are such fitting nods to their past and a bone thrown for the uber diehards. The front and back cover features some cool band shots. Nice gatefold opening here with Paul and Bruce. Now, there is an insert included with this release that has photos, print ads, press blurbs, and such. Out of 500 numbered copies, this is copy number 200, and it is pressed on red vinyl. Kind of looks more orange, but it's stated to be red. Next up is Rock and Roll California. This is a soundboard recording taken from the K-Rock Weenie Roast held at the Irvine Meadows Amphitheater in Irvine, California on June 15th, 1996 during the reunion tour. Yes, while the Tiger Stadium show was hyped as the tour launch, this was a sort of warm-up show prior to the tour commencing, which allowed the group to work out some technical kinks and performance snags. So this is, in fact, the first show the original four members of KISS played since 1979. The performance itself is very loose. There's a premature siren going off during most of Deuce, but the show is historic to say the least. Very much like Reunion Square Garden that I showcased earlier, this is another case of board audio from a pro shot, since this was featured as the general release bonus disc for Kissology Volume 3. Paul and Ace take center stage in regards to the packaging of this release. The front has the two playing Paul's Gibson double neck as seen in the promo film for Hard Luck Woman from '76. And the flip side has Ace playing his Cherry Sunburst double neck from '96. This is also numbered out of 100 copies. This is copy number 36. There is also a fold-out poster which has some reunion-era portraits. And this pressing comes pressed on blue vinyl. Next up is Not for the Innocent. This is a collection of demos spanning the period of around 1976 to 1998. This particular bootleg was actually first released on CD back in 2006, and there was a vinyl pressing done back in 2016 with a more condensed track listing, and this 20th anniversary picture disc has a completely revamped track listing with tracks not featured on the original CD version. This kind of material is bootleg heaven, with tons of great early demo versions of the title track of this release, Not for the Innocent, Mr. Speed, and Love Gun. Some of the interesting variations on this release are versions of Baby Driver, which was sung by Peter on Rock and Roll Over, but this demo version has Gene singing the lead scat vocal. Calling Dr. Love appears as some sort of alternate version with some extra vocal embellishments from Gene. The versions of Wouldn't You Like to Know Me and Tonight You Belong to Me are from Paul's solo album. They sound almost like alternate mixes, and there are even some tracks that never made it onto KISS albums, such as Forever and Reputation from the Love Gun era. Do You Want to Touch Me now from Revenge, and the duo of In Your Face and It's My Life recorded during Psycho Circus. Now, this picture disc is numbered out of 500 copies. This is copy number 337, and the photos on the picture disc itself, which I'll show you, are taken from the sessions for the Hotter Than Hell photo shoot. Next up is Wembley 83. This is an audience recording taken from the Wembley Arena in London, England on October 23rd, 1983 during the Lick It Up tour. I think where this show lies in the KISSTORY timeline is noteworthy since this show took place literally just over a week after Kiss's first non-makeup show that took place in Lisbon, Portugal on October 11th. This is very much a standard early Lick It Up tour set list. It features Exciter before it got dropped, and this is the only Kiss show in KISSTORY to have ended with Strutter, which typically was not performed on this tour. You can almost sense Vinny's solo going on a bit when Paul cuts right in and introduces him on guitar, and listening to Gene's bass solo on this show reminds me how his solo spot in the show was very Demon-esque before it kind of evolved to what it became by the mid-80s on later tours. Aside from all that, I think this is one of the most fantastic sounding audience recordings from the tour. It almost hits that oral sweet spot in audience tapes where it's not too bass heavy, the audience doesn't overpower the music, it feels tame, and nothing takes away from the enjoyment. The front cover features Gene breathing fire on the front cover, along with a band photo in the background on the back. The gatefold opens up, and we have Gene, Paul, and Vinny on the tank drum riser, which was recycled from the Creatures tour, and this would have been during the end of Black Diamond. This was put out by Casino Records, so it's very good quality stuff. Numbered as well. This is copy number 13 out of 250, and it is pressed on yellow vinyl. Next up is Dortmund Rock City. This is an audience recording taken from the Westfalenhalle in Dortmund, Germany on March 27th, 1999 during the Psycho Circus tour. The band sounds a bit tinny and distant, and the excitement from the audience kind of ebbs and flows. Then when the explosions go off, they just completely overpower the mix. Setlist wise, it's pretty much your standard reunion era setlist, but with some focus on the then new Psycho Circus album with the title track Into the Void and Within in the setlist. Honestly, I mainly got this because I didn't have any bootlegs from the Psycho Circus tour, and the opportunity came to get this at a slightly discounted price since this is a couple years old and the value of Kiss boots after they are first released only goes up and up, so in the collection it went. The front cover has a cool graphic from the Psycho Circus comics, and there's some cool black and white comic imagery in the background, which continues on to the back, which is pretty cool. It also comes with a fold-out poster promoting the show, which is cool. Also nice use of the modified German logo. This copy is numbered as well. As you can see, it is copy number 109. And the blue dot sticker, of course, indicates that it is pressed on blue vinyl with comic renderings of the band members consisting the center labels. Next up is Vivant IV. This is a soundboard recording taken from the Erie Civic Center in Erie, Pennsylvania on March 27th, 1986 during the Asylum tour. Vivant is this ongoing series of Kiss bootleg releases that started back in 2018, focusing on 80s Kiss tours. Vivant 1 had a show from the Creatures tour, Vivant 2 had one from the Lick It Up tour, and so on and so forth. And to tie it all in, Vivant translates to alive. The stencil font even drives the intent further. So think of it as a series of alives from the 1980s. Now, I don't have Vivants 1 to 3, so this is my first one. And the main reason why I got this one is that it's the first soundboard recording that I own from the Asylum tour. Unfortunately, I don't own the well-known Charlotte show, so until that gets repressed at a lower price, this one will do. Not gonna lie, I'm kind of feeling the itch to get the other Vivant releases out there if possible, but we'll see what happens. Overall, this is a very interesting show because throughout the Asylum tour, there were some tracks swapped in and out, and for the show, they included Creatures of the Night, which is pretty cool, but otherwise, it's a very enjoyable release and recording. The jacket has some cool era-appropriate photos, and the gatefold has a cool live photo collage. There is also a tour program style booklet chocked with plenty of pages of live shots taken of the band and various photo shoots. Something fun that you can kind of flip through as you listen to the release. There is also some cool extras. You get this sort of postcard sized insert showing all of the variants available of this release. as well as a non-folded obi strip that kind of wraps around the top of the jacket, kind of like this. I kind of flattened it out just to kind of preserve it a little bit, but it comes packaged like this. Now, because the jacket has a purple hue, I, of course, had to get this on purple vinyl. And last but not least is the aptly titled Stone Pony Asbury Park 41490. This is an audience recording taken from, you guessed it, the Stone Pony in Asbury Park, New Jersey on April 14th, 1990 during the Hot in the Shade album cycle. I say that since the tour hadn't commenced and this was a sort of one-off show. So the backstory behind this show is that this was a benefit gig for a producer's daughter who was denied medical treatment from her medical insurance provider. So KISS, along with Joe Lynn Turner, members of Blue Oyster Cult, and the Young Rascals joined forces for the cause. Now, this show has its interesting moments, to say the least. First off, Eric Carr is playing a half electronic drum kit for this show, and Gene's bass amp gave out during the first attempt of Fits Like a Glove, so they restarted it when it was rerouted to a Marshall. But setlist-wise, they played a concise set of then newer stuff and some classics. Interestingly, this was the first of only 2 times that they played Portrayed off Hot in the Shade, so that's noteworthy. The recording itself is pleasant on the ears, and just the fact that I was able to hunt down a Hot in the Shade era bootleg is more gratifying since there simply isn't much out there on vinyl. The show in Asbury Park takes up 3 sides of vinyl, and then the 4th side is dedicated to some offshoot tracks from this period. There's the first and only time a Little Caesar from Hot in the Shade was performed, along with Hell or High Water from Crazy Nights. Those tracks are from a radio station contest show from Rosetta, California, and then Fits Like a Glove and Under the Gun from the May 18th show at the Palace of Auburn Hills in Detroit. Now, this was put out by a label called Sound of Silence, and it comes packaged in this sort of cool blue leather hardbound gatefold jacket with a photo of Gene on the cover and some silver inlays on the front and back. And it opens up kind of like a folio, and you can see the center labels right there. Now, there is a really cool booklet that I'll show you guys that has some really cool photos from the show, as well as press clippings. Just the photos alone kind of give you a sense of how intimate this show really was in terms of the size of the Stone Pony. And believe me, as a Jersey native, it is very, very small. There is also a cool sort of set list sheet notating the tracks on this release. And the vinyl itself is pressed on gorgeous marble blue colored vinyl. Whew, that was a lot. So there you guys go. That is yet another KISS-themed bootleg vinyl haul. A long-awaited one, I should say. And it's funny because I'm putting this video out now, and there's still other stuff that I have to share that I got in recently. So maybe it won't have to wait a year to get another installment out. But if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead, give it a like, and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. And most importantly, keep the record spinning.